The federal government is pulling zero punches when it comes to fraud in Minnesota.
Fraud, fraud, and more fraud. It seems like every day there's a new discovery of stolen taxpayer dollars in my home state of Minnesota.
Every
Who
day.
is smack dab in the middle of it? The self-acknowledged liar, incompetent, failed governor, and failed vice presidential candidate Tim Walz.
My state are experiencing the pettiness of this
Pettiness?
administration.
You robbed the
I always have
country.
to check myself because he brings out the worst in me. Thanksgiving night, I'm minding my own business, playing Yahtzee with my
Well, there's
relatives,
fraud going
and I
on.
get a drive-by slur from him calling me seriously the R word.
Oh, my
They
goodness.
went after a target who is pretty typical. ICE agents say
Pretty typical,
Queen
huh?
Tuna Capuz entered the U.S. illegally in 2023. He was picked up but then released, and then he came here to the Twin Cities. A police officer found him slumped in his car, and when he was in the process of arresting him, they got into a fight. ICE agents say he assaulted the police officer, even attempted to choke him and steal his weapon. Now, he was picked up, he was arrested, but then released before ICE could file a detainment.
Look at this.
So yesterday, they had to put together a big special response team and go into the north side of Minneapolis to get him.
That's crazy. Look, they got the Marines going in there to get this guy.
If there was no sanctuary policies in a city like Minneapolis and St. Paul, we'd be able to get him at the jail. But because they have those policies, we have to go look for him at their house. And we go to their house, we're going to arrest anybody that's illegal in that house.
This is deliberate. On behalf
And
of
that's
these
what they did.
sanctuary
Two more guys
judges
ICE
and
says are
leaders.
in the U.S. illegally were found in that house. They were swept up in the raid. People in the neighborhood
they got
started
other people too,
waking
huh?
up and blowing whistles. That drew a small crowd of protesters. And one of the protesters put her hands on the ICE agent.
Look at
A little
this
bit
woman.
of a shove, if you will, trying to get through the perimeter. That was enough
Don't
for her
attack
to
the
be
federal
zip-tied
government.
and taken into federal custody. All of it instead of handing this individual over in the jail.
Right?
Sandra, back to you.
Okay. They want it this way. They want to have ICE fight it out on the streets of their communities so they can say they're after everybody, which is untrue.
For the world being dumped into our country, the people that aren't wanted in their countries, by the way. I think that's a great, like Somalia.
Ouch.
Welcome. That's called the Great Big Minnesota Scam with one of the dumbest governors ever in history.
Governor Walz, minding his own business while billions of dollars leave his state and are sent out of the country.
I love this Elon Omar, whatever the her name is. I love her. She comes in, does nothing but she's always complaining. She comes from a country where, I mean, it's considered about the worst country in the world, right? They have no military, they have no nothing, they have no parliament. They don't know what the word parliament means. They have nothing. They have no police. They police themselves. They each other all the time.
And the president's not pulling punches
I love it. She
either.
comes to our country, and she's always complaining about the Constitution allows me to do this. We ought to get her out. She married her brother in order to get in, right?
They're looking
She
into
married her
that right
brother.
now, by the way.
Can you imagine if Donald Trump married his sister? Beautiful. She's a beautiful person. If I married my sister,
they would go berserk. Meanwhile,
Tonight,
the fraud in
we
Minnesota
are getting our
keeps
first
getting
look into
worse.
allegations of fraud.
Inside this envelope from Minnesota's Department of Human Services was a thumb drive filled with copies of tips and complaints made to the state involving taxpayer-funded programs. In one of the first tips we reviewed made mention of alleged fraud. We saw a tipster report alleged personal care assistance fraud, saying he brags that the PCA provider does not come to give him any service, but he puts in the paperwork, gets the check, and splits the money with the
what a
personal care
scam.
worker.
The customers are
DHS
scamming.
supervisor assigned the tip to an investigator, writing, "When you have determined your plan to address the issue, please provide us with your plan."
Did they ever investigate?
Based on the documents reviewed, it's unclear what happened
So
next.
nothing.
We kept searching and found one case where investigators went after the provider asking for money back. It involved a company that had previously billed for more than $3 million in services. In one situation, a tipster reported they weren't getting the full care they were entitled to. The worker told the state that she works fast, asked rhetorically if she was supposed to sit in her car for the scheduled hours when her work was already
so they
completed.
could get paid.
Investigators asked the company to pay back more than $7,700 in services not rendered. And then we saw a tip come from within DHS.
Everyone defending this fraud is telling us that these programs, like Ilhan Omar, she said, oh, we set up these programs so fast, there weren't any guardrails in place, maybe there was some abuse because we tried to help people so quickly. I mean, here are the guardrails literally not working at all while people are stealing billions.
A child care inspector calling for a deeper billing investigation, writing possible fraud. All of the families that are attending are staff children. Additional documents connected to this tip were redacted by DHS.
That's so
and
crazy.
Then we found a problem at one point with the tip line used to report fraud. A DHS employee wrote, I just tried calling the DHS hotline and was notified that I could not leave a message because the mailbox is full.
There were so many fraudulent things happening here. The mailbox for fraud tips was maxed out.
It seems like this is a significant issue that remains unresolved.
Of course.
We're still going through more than 2 years of complaints and tips made to DHS. Just how many tips and complaints were given to us on that thumb drive? We asked DHS a question, and they're working to provide us an answer.
They don't even know. They don't even know how much fraud there is. We're still figuring it out. Meanwhile, we've got people threatening ICE here.
Hey, you pulled up when I was not there? Oh, so boy, you gotta get popped next time I see you.
Wow.
Bring the whole cavalry.
City and state leaders say this video shows a troubling trend. They say some U.S. citizens are being swept up in the immigration crackdown in the Twin Cities. New tonight, Governor Tim Walz is calling for changes to the federal enforcement. In a letter to Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, the governor said the forcefulness, lack of communication, and unlawful practices displayed by your agents
is very shocking.
That's what you hear when you speak to people who live and work near Cedar Riverside.
I'm sure it is shocking.
And videos like this circulating shows exactly why.
But look, they're attacking
ICE agents moving through the neighborhood as crowds form.
Why are crowds forming?
Stopping people on sidewalks and demanding documents.
Where were you born?
In Somalia.
Somalia? Do you have your ID on you?
Yeah, I do.
What you got? Passport card?
I have a passport.
Great.
Okay, can I see it?
Yeah. Why you want to see it though?
Just to verify.
What's wrong with that? That guy was so nice.
Escalated.
And look, they're throwing things.
Freelance journalist.
This guy right here just threw something at those federal agents, and we're supposed to want accountability from the federal government. They are under attack. They are being assaulted. And if they were to forcibly arrest that guy because he tries to flee and he's a U.S. citizen, why is that a bad thing? That person should be in jail. You don't attack police, ever.
And then they start, flashing tear gas. They're just using like
they're
crazy.
being attacked.
I haven't seen
I just saw it.
But it's this moment that pushed this neighborhood to its breaking point, and leaders pressing for accountability.
All I did was step outside as a Somali American.
This was the moment when 20-year-old Mubashir was pushed inside a Cedar Riverside restaurant by ICE agents.
I told him I'm a U.S. citizen. What is going on? He didn't seem to care.
Mubashir says he was held at a federal building several miles away until he says he was allowed to show his passport.
I asked him, can you take me back to where you picked me up
from?
Look,
this is such a
scam. They said, no, you have to walk in the snow.
I apologize that this happened to
you.
Oh
my goodness.
In my city, with people wearing vests that say police.
This is all political theater.
Demanding accountability.
Why doesn't the sanctuary mayor tell us what happened?
Immediate changes on how these
what
operations
did this guy do? Was he out there assaulting
carried
people?
Out.
This all happening as the Trump administration ramps up enforcement
We're not
targeting
getting the whole
undocumented
story.
Somali nationals.
It's not only undocumented, and it's not only people who has a crime.
Yes, it is. That's who they're out there trying to talk to. When people interject themselves in these situations, when they assault ICE agents like we just saw on camera, when they put their hands on federal agents, when they interfere with an investigation, when they get violent, and when they're uncooperative, these agents have to step in and do something. But the narrative is that because an American citizen was detained for a reason that they're not telling us, probably because they did something wrong, we're all supposed to be in fear. And people really believe that.
Recently
Meanwhile,
released audio
the Attorney General is getting sucked into the fraud here. Listen to
between the
this.
Attorney General and individuals who were later implicated and in some cases convicted in the Feeding Our Future scandal.
This is bad
in
news
those recordings, the Attorney General...
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
They're trying to stop
point of order. Masons 124, paragraph 1, in debate, members must confine remarks to questions before the body and avoid personalities. The debate here is not any individual. It is the policy and the amendment.
They're trying to shut it down.
Representative Niska.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Attorney General was asked in those recordings to use his authority to protect businesses under investigation for wrongdoing.
That's
and rather
awful.
than distance himself or remain neutral to allow the legal process to unfold, he responded in those recordings, of course, I'm here to help.
Mr. Speaker.
They don't want him to say
Point
anything.
of parliamentary inquiry.
State your point of parliamentary inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, there was a point of order, and I didn't hear a ruling or any resolution of the point of order. Was there a resolution to it?
Why would you not want to hear about fraud in your own state?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Attorney General in those recordings even urged the individuals, let's go fight these people. He was offered campaign contributions during that meeting, contributions that he later accepted.
Oh,
the
and he
release of
accepted
those
the bribe.
audio recordings raises questions about what's going on in the Attorney General's office that go directly to the need to pass the legislation that we had previously debated, House File 20.
This is
Although
crazy.
he has insisted that nothing came of the meeting, his office sought disclosure of closed investigative data.
Masons 124.
The A11 will help ensure that what happens behind closed doors in the Attorney General's office sees the light of day.
And it needs to, because if the people that are in charge of the guardrails are getting absorbed into the fraud scheme, we got a lot more going on here than anybody involved in it wants us to find out about. And why is it the Democrat Party just doesn't care about
one other
this?
thing that the chairman spoke about. He
Why don't they care about
specifically
fraud?
said that he's concerned about the fraud.
Yes.
He's not giving us numbers, but I can give you some numbers. If we're
They keep
concerned
growing
about
every
how
day.
much money it may be costing us because systems are not perfect, we have no perfect systems. We have always had some level of fraud in anything that we have because there's no such thing as perfection walking on this earth.
Okay, that is the socialist excuse for every single type of criminality there is. Well, we always have some fraud, so why are we going to bother investigating it? Well, we always have some illegal immigration, so why bother closing the border? And why make that a crime when it's always happening? And, oh, sure, we've always got some level of people out there attacking ICE agents, but, you know, why don't we just say that they're exercising their civil rights? Why don't we just say that they're peaceful observers? Because, you know, everybody gets a little bit worked up at some point. They're always trying to justify evil behavior in some manner for some reason.
The $7.2 million mailbox. That's how prosecutors described to the jury the supposed office of Promise Health LLC, the home health care company owned by Abdi Fattah Yusuf on Central Avenue in Minneapolis, where several other similar businesses were supposedly located. Jurors saw dozens of checks written to Yusuf's wife and family members and $1.1 million in bank transfers and cash withdrawals to himself. Money Promise Health received through state Medicaid reimbursements for claiming to provide personal care assistant or PCA services. The jury saw it as fraud.
I was beyond a reasonable doubt.
What the jury didn't know is that before they deliberated, Judge Sarah West tossed out the top charge of racketeering.
Why would she do that?
Then 3 months after the verdict, Judge West made the rare move of tossing out the full verdict as well, giving Yusuf a judgment of acquittal. Court records show other Hennepin County judges tossing related cases before they reached trial. Judge Amber Brennan dismissed the charges against Yusuf's wife, Lol Ahmed, and Judge Hillary Caligiuri dismissed charges against co-defendant Abdi Weli Mahamoud.
So you can steal $7 million and the judge will dismiss the case against you while the jury is deliberating on that case and comes back with the obvious guilty verdict. This is nothing but state-sponsored theft and criminality, and they stole from all of America because these are welfare funds that they got reimbursed for. It's crazy.
Saw this story, and immediately I was outraged.
Republican Senator Michael Holstrom requested all exhibits from the Yusuf trial and says he's researching what can be done to stop and better prosecute these cases in the future.
Even with extreme judges, they knew that going in. We need to be able to overcome that when the evidence is so clear.
Right. How do you go to jail for stealing from the government here? You don't.
Law changes
are
needed.
Yeah, but what's hard to square is that you have a jury, right? And that's what the conclusion they drew and what we all kind of think of how trials work. And the judge is dealing with like the legal parts of the law. That's where it doesn't make sense.
Right, it doesn't make sense unless they're trying to deliberately protect the criminals here, from the attorney general to the judges to elected officials, to Governor Walz, to Representative Omar. The whole thing is just a big mess.
Editor, can you talk to us about how you've written editorials critical of Minnesota Democrat leadership for turning a blind eye to taxpayer money getting stolen
in frauds? They totally turned a blind eye.
Can you talk to us about that? Because now Minnesota taxpayers are going to have to pay up double to clean this up.
Yeah, well, the story is an absolute scandal. I think President Trump is right to shine a spotlight on it because it shows a couple of the big problems from previous Democratic administrations. One of those big problems is all of this government money that was essentially available for the taking for anyone who showed up. So $1 billion was stolen in people claiming to be feeding the hungry during COVID, and both Democratic Governor Tim Walz in Minnesota and also the Democrats in Washington who created the program put very few controls to prevent that kind of fraud.
Zero controls.
Another problem.
And we just heard that the controls they had didn't work. The fraud hotline was totally useless. There was so much fraud being reported, the thing just shut down.
Is immigration itself, because you have these communities of Somali people in Minneapolis, many of whom aren't really assimilating properly. We had a piece in the Free Press recently by Ayan Hirsi Ali, who is Somali herself, talking about how these communities, they're not really productive often, they have insular attitudes and habits, and they end up committing fraud kind of as a sort of habit because they aren't properly integrated into American society.
There's no excuse for fraud.
That's an interesting
I'm not ready to excuse
analysis
it.
there,
it's
because
illegal.
this Minnesota scandal didn't make it into the national press in a big way until the New York Times jumped on it in late November. We reported on it before they did. But what do you make of this? It's not just in Minnesota. The GAO found pervasive welfare fraud across 46 states in just the first quarter of last year. It's nearly 200,000 instances of fraud nationwide.
The whole country is getting robbed everywhere. This isn't just a Minnesota thing. We already heard that it's now being replicated, the same exact scheme in Maine. This is happening everywhere. 46 states. What states aren't stealing? And are those states that just haven't been busted yet? It sounds like this money is out there, and whoever asks for it is going to get it as long as they got a good enough excuse for why they need it.
It could be in all 50 states. It's in New York, California, Mississippi.
Yeah, all the Democrat
loses
states
anywhere
for
from
sure.
$233 billion to $521 billion annually to fraud.
$500 billion
to fraud.
You
can't even believe what they are.
This is so wild.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's an essential problem.
Now we know why Tim Walz was supposed to be the vice president. Now we know why, because you know what? This fraud scheme, stealing from the government, that's been a grift in America for a very long time, and he's the captain of it because his state's the worst, and it's all happened under his watch. And by installing him as the vice president, he's the one that's going to be pulling the strings. He's the one that's going to get to turn a blind eye at the highest level of government to what's going on here. And what happens? The industrial fraud complex in this country is just going to grow and grow and grow and multiply and multiply and multiply. These schemes are going to be everywhere, empowering political interests that hate hardworking Americans and hardworking legal residents and just want to defraud our country every single way possible. What do you think about this? Was that why they picked Tim Walz as the VP? Let me know. See you in the next video.